None of these three men died the way you think. No shootout, no bear, no arrow in the back. These men lived in one of the harshest landscapes in North America, where a single mistake meant death. Most never expected to live to 40. Using original historical sources and with the help of AI, I carefully try to bring their vanished world back to life, so that, for a moment, we can stand where they once stood. Today, we're following three of the most legendary mountain men who ever lived, and three deaths that will change the way you see the Wild West. Jim Bridger, the man. The mountains couldn't kill. Forget the idea that every mountain man died young, with a rifle in his hands and an arrow in his back. Picture the opposite. 50 years in a land that was actively trying to kill him, and it never quite managed. Jim Bridger went west as a teenager and simply never came back to normal life. He survived the Arikara War of 1823. He outlasted grizzlies, starvation, and blizzards that froze weaker men where they stood. He was the first white man known to reach the Great Salt Lake, and when he tasted the water and found it salty, he decided he'd found an arm of the Pacific Ocean. He was off by about 1,000 miles, but you can't fault the confidence. There's a story that a doctor once cut an arrowhead out of Bridger's back that had been lodged there for 3 years, and that Bridger barely flinched. True or not, that was the reputation. So here's the part the history books rush right past. The ultimate survivor wasn't taken by a war party or a winter storm. His body simply wore out. Crippled by arthritis, half-choked by a swollen goiter on his neck, Bridger finally went home, to a small farm in Missouri. And that's where the man spent his final years, tending apple trees. His eyesight failed and he went completely blind. The old scout who once crossed 1,000 miles of empty country by memory now had to be led around his own porch by the hand. They say he still asked about the mountains, whether the passes were open yet, as if he might ride out one more time. On July 17, 1881, at 77 years old, Jim Bridger died quietly in his bed, far from the peaks that never beat him. Thomas Broken Hand Fitzpatrick, killed by the city. A frozen valley, a war party at his back. Thomas Fitzpatrick, riding flat out for his life, when his rifle explodes in his hands and shatters his wrist. He keeps riding. He gets away. The tribes gave him a name for it that stuck forever: Broken Hand. This was the man who rediscovered the South Pass, the one gentle gap through the Rockies that opened the entire Oregon Trail. Every wagon, every family, every dream heading west rolled through the door he found. Hundreds of thousands of them. If you walked the trail, you walked in his footsteps, and the tribes trusted him, something almost no white man could claim. That trust put him at the center of the largest council the West had ever seen, the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851. 10,000 people, dozens of nations, and Broken Hand, standing in the middle of it all, holding a fragile peace together with his word. So, picture where his story ends, not on the plains. Here, winter, 1854. An aging frontiersman travels east, back to the capital, to fight for the tribes in rooms full of men who'd never seen a horizon, alone in a cold, wet, indifferent city. And that's where it caught him. Not an arrow. Not a blade. Pneumonia. On February 7th, 1854, the man who had slept in blizzards and crossed ice-choked rivers died, coughing in a hotel bed. 30 years of war parties couldn't touch Thomas Fitzpatrick. A rainy week in the city killed him in days. Kit Carson, the broken heart. If the frontier ever had a real-life action hero, it was Kit Carson. He was short, quiet, and couldn't read or write a single word. Yet his name exploded across the country in dime novels that turned him into a superstar while he was still alive. Think of him as the frontier's first viral celebrity, famous for adventures most people would only ever read about. He guided Fremont across the Sierra Nevada. He fought in the Mexican-American War, once crawling for miles through enemy lines at night, over cactus and rock, to bring help to trapped American soldiers. He rose all the way to brigadier general, very likely the only American ever to reach that rank while being unable to read. By any measure, he seemed impossible to stop, but the body always keeps the score. Years earlier, a brutal riding accident had crushed his chest when his horse fell and dragged him. From that injury, an aortic aneurysm, a swelling, weakened artery, had been quietly growing inside him, a slow fuse burning for years. Then came the one blow no frontier skill could survive. In the spring of 1868, his beloved wife, Josefa, died from complications after giving birth to their child. The grief broke something no arrow ever had. Just 10 days later, on May 23, 1868, Carson lay at Fort Lyon, Colorado, weak, worn down, and heartbroken. Eating one of his last meals, he began to cough violently, and the aneurysm ruptured. His doctor held his head as the end came fast. Carson looked up at his friends and spoke his final words. "Goodbye, doctor and friends. Adios, compadres." He was 58. Kit Carson didn't fall in a blaze of gunfire. He died of a burst artery, 10 days after losing the woman he loved, about as close to dying of a broken heart as history ever gets.